Welcome to another episode of Leadership Synergized. I'm so thankful and blessed. We're also blessed to have Dr. J.C. Campbell with us today. Dr. Campbell, welcome and thank you, brother. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I am always honored to be in your presence. Thank you for allowing me to be on this wonderful program, and I'm excited. I'm excited. Thank you.
Well, Dr. Campbell brings such a positive energy every time we have a chance to just sit down and talk or to hear him speak, whether it's performing his role as a pastor, a minister, or through his role as a diversity and inclusion vice president focused individual. Just such a positive passion, and the consistency that you bring to leadership is just outstanding. And Dr. Campbell, as we were talking just a bit before we came on air here a moment ago, the intent of Leadership Synergize is to bring people who've had a positive impact in my life and have helped me grow so much. And you are one of those that stand at the very forefront in today's world. And I'm so honored again and blessed that you would take time from your busy schedule. For those tuning in, listening, and/or watching, why don't you introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. Again, thank you so much for the kind words. It is my honor, and I appreciate you. You are truly a friend and a colleague and a brother. So thank you. J.C. Campbell, born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I am currently the Vice President for Enrollment, as well as the Chief Diversity Officer at Oakland City University. I also serve as the proud senior pastor of Greater Hope Church in Evansville, Indiana, which is the fastest growing church in Evansville. And so I am extremely excited to be on the call. On the program, married to my beautiful wife, Nisha. And we have three beautiful daughters, Victoria, Valerie, and Vanessa. And so I'm just honored to be here.
Well, again, your passion for others and serving the mission as a pastor, but also just serving and truly, you know, the message of love God, love people. I don't think I've ever met anyone who emulates that naturally more than Dr. Campbell. So I believe everyone involved in watching and listening is going to have something to take away. And I would be very surprised if you, as I, don't walk away with a heart that just jumps higher as it beats with greater inspiration to go out and serve. And Dr. Campbell, as I reflect back on my career, entering my mid-60s now, things that weren't as clear at one point in my life, probably fogged up on why they happened the way they did, why the results were what they were, or why they didn't happen as expected. I can now see, for whatever reason, much more clearly. And when I was part of a team that was successful, that created significant change and had positive results to levels of excellence, it was because of the focus and the commitment they provided to serve, transform, inspire and influence, love, and lead. So what I'd like to do is just walk through each one of those. I call it still leadership, and it's a synergized leadership. And I'm paraphrasing Coach John Wooden, and I know I'm not going to do this quote justice. Coach Wooden was famous, and it's my favorite part for his words of wisdom during the 20th century, in particular of his athletes and his students. And when he felt his teams were rushing or going too quick, he focused on slowing them down and allowing the speed to come, so to speak, in that regard, which seems like a paradox or an oxymoron a bit, but it's so true. When we as leaders are more still and starting with the S and still, serving self, bringing value to self, so we have a greater level of bringing value to others, the opportunity for significance and growth and impact, at least in my experience, has come in some of the most unexpected ways.
Right.
If you would, for our listeners, when you look back at what drove Dr. Campbell's heart to serve and serve others, but also develop that value within self, so you've got a greater value to bring others, what has led, motivated you, or helped you sustain a level of success that you have?
Well, that's an amazing question. There were a couple of things that I think impacted me or kind of drove me to that. And the first thing being a intentional change agent. One of the things that I think that keeps me going, it's my fuel, it's my fire, it's my fuel, is that I am intentional about every organization that I'm a part of. When I leave, can my successor know that I was there? So it's very important to me to be able, not kind of falling, not in a superficial, arrogant way, but to be able to say that every organization that I touch, every organization that I impact, there's some influence, there is some positive energy, there is some policy change, there is some kind of educational fulfillment that is done at that institution when I'm there and when I'm gone. And so that's always been very important to me. I've always been told, JC, does anybody even realize that you're there, or do they realize that you're not? When you're not there that day, is there a, oh, there's a difference? And so for me, that's the first thing, is just being a true change agent, to go into an organization and say, how can I work to serve my institution, to serve my organization, to serve my church, to serve my family, to serve this business, this company? How can I go in and change the culture, change the framework so that people can tell the difference? So that's the first thing. The second, the part of that motivates me, is to see people be their best selves. That is the hardest part, I think, because oftentimes people can get in a groove. They get familiar. They get to a place where they're like, I'm good here. I'm coasting, and sometimes wanting to make those differences and wanting to see people be their best selves, there is a struggle there. There's a gap there. There's some confusion there, and so oftentimes the two don't always go along. They don't always connect. And so how do you merge those two to say, hey, I want to bring a positive impact, but I also want to make sure that you're your best self, so that people, not, it's not about me. It's not so much about, oh, is JC here? But I want it to get to a place where other stakeholders, other team players, other leaders can also have that impact to say, not only do we feel the difference when JC's not here, but when Kevin's not here, we feel that same hole. When John Doe's not there, we feel that same energy is missing. When Jane Doe's not there, we feel like something's off. So those have been the two kind of overarching themes or foundational themes that have kind of led me in leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. I appreciate that. In particular, the point of being a change agent. Change has been something that's been a focus of many businesses, education, basically from the get go. May
Yeah,
not have been turned with that piece, but change is something that many people, and I've struggled with certain amounts of change. And it's an area I always promoted and thought myself good at times. But as I
yeah,
reflect back at times, there's been times I wasn't so good with change. So
it's hard.
as a change agent, when you're faced with change, and sometimes it can be a view that this should be a very simple change that could end up with the greatest anchor of movement of the team or an organization. But when it comes to change, what do you think the top two steps, initial steps to take in any structure is to ensure that everyone involved doesn't lose that sense of hope or stability?
The first thing, if I can go back to scripture, because I am a devout Christian, and the scripture says, write the vision and make it plain, so that the people will see it and run with it. I think one of the challenges with change is you have to communicate it clearly and effectively. A lot of people, in my estimation, in my experience, buck up against the system of change when they do not have a clear understanding of, well, what is that? What does that mean for us? Does that mean Kevin and I are going to lose jobs? Do me and Kevin have to switch offices? Do we have to move to the third floor? We've always been on the first floor. Are we moving to a brand new building? Will my salary change? Who's going to be my new boss? Who am I going to have to answer to? I now have a performance metrics. Does that mean I'm not doing a good job? So all these things in the human mind, when we hear change, we're shifting, we're rearranging, there's transition, all these things begin to run through the human mind like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? When I think ultimately the best thing for leaders to do is put it out on the table. Why not be transparent? Why not share with our colleagues? Why not share with our team players? So a perfect example that I'll give is I worked at an institution, and we were bringing this new change into the institution. And all these questions came up about, well, why are we doing this and why are we doing that? And I had to ask myself, well, is it that we're doing it, or is it who's doing it? I couldn't tell at first. Was it me because I was a new person on the team? Or was it just the fact that they didn't like change? And after a lot of research and getting to know the team, and that's a caveat, you need to know your team. You need to know the people that you work with. After, doing some research, I found out that they had been through a lot of change and none of it was clearly identified. None of it was clearly communicated. Nobody asked their opinion. So one of the things that I did is I said, okay, let me step back. Let me take a beat. You said be still. I love that. Being still in the moment. And I began to just meet with leaders and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking of. What are your thoughts? And what I found out, Kevin, is all of them love the idea. They just didn't have the opportunity to understand and ask questions, or to even give their piece of advice, because after that they now were real stakeholders. They had a piece of the pie in this. They said, hey, I gave you this idea and this is, I want to make sure it's successful. So I think being able to clearly communicate is a very big piece when it comes to change, because change is not always easy. Even if it seems minute to you as a leader, it is big to somebody else. As a pastor, I learned the hard way that, hey, maybe I don't think that the color of the wall or the changing of pews to chairs is an important thing, but there's somebody in my congregation that really believes that's important to them. And I should not be so dismissive that I think, oh, it's the color of a wall. Who cares? Somebody cares. So find that somebody and say, hey, listen, this is what we're thinking. I know that you have some opinions or some suggestions, but I just want you to know. And 9 times out of 10, I think, in my experience, what I have found is people are more susceptible to say, the fact that you even talk to me about it, it makes me more comfortable. So communication is key.
I love that. I love that communication is key. And what you just stated, Dr. Campbell, goes a bit beyond communication. There's really a connection there because there's a caring piece showed, which leads into my next question. The T in still, all about transformation. Many times I've been through job changes, some of choice, some of not of choice,
Sure.
whether job elimination, layoffs, or what have you in that regard, and used to look at it as a transition.
Mhm.
But as my faith has walked me closer to God and growth, hopefully to be more like Jesus, you sense it's not really transition opportunities we have when change occurs. It's really transformational opportunities. Being a
Mhm.
pastor, being a minister, I'm sure you get a chance to see that transformation in the human focus, in the human commitment, the human purpose, but also in
Yeah.
your organizational leadership. Talk a bit about what you find the value in looking at change as more transformational than transition can bring to all of us.
I learned, and I will be very transparent. One of the hardest lessons I had to learn as a leader is transformation and tyranny are two different things.
Mm.
I think a lot of leaders need to understand that you can transform an organization without being a tyrant within the organization. And I don't think I was a tyrant, so to speak, but what I think one of my character flaws is when I see something that needs to be transformed, I fix on it, Kevin. I
Mm.
go after it. And sometimes I don't care about the 50 plus member who was responsible for painting the wall. I don't care about the employee who originally put the first policy in place. Sometimes I can be so one track mind that I think I know what's best. We need to do it and it's going to get done. Well, that can lead into tyranny. And so, what I had to learn, because of course, and I'll say this, my intent was never to go into ministry and my intent was never to go into higher ed. I wanted to be an attorney. And I've always had that legal mind
Mm.
where I'm going to hit it. I'm going to get it. It doesn't matter what you think. This is what's right. This is fair. There's no gray area. It's black and white, and this is how it ought to be. Well, as leaders, unfortunately, we can't be that way. We can't be tyrants. So I think ultimately, transformational leadership will always trump transitional uh, leadership, because transitional leadership does not lend itself to community. It lends itself into open doors. Somebody goes out, one person comes in. This person goes out, one person comes in. But transformational leadership involves the entire organization in understanding the quirks, the ins and the outs, and the grooves and the niches of the organization to ensure that it's operating at maximum capacity. I'll tell you, this is why I am very adamant about every church should not have a search committee, but a succession committee.
Mm.
Because I've often found in churches that search committees are transitional. Let's call the pastor, let's open up the search, let's take these resumes, let's find the best candidate. And that's great and well, but I wonder what our churches would be like had we had a transformational leadership model that says, hey, we've had a leader. Kevin's been our pastor for 25, 30 years. We love him, we know him, and we trust him. I wonder what would happen if we sat down and said, hey, what do you think our next pastor should look like? Where do you think our next leader should be? Because with transformational leadership, you have to be looking beyond yourself. Transitional leadership only looks at me, and when I retire, good luck. Figure it out. But transformational leadership understands, hey, I won't be the pastor forever. I won't be the CEO forever. How are we going to build on this model? How are we going to transform the organization with a new, exciting, and wonderful leader that's going to take it above and beyond? We have to learn, I'm babbling a little bit, but I think we as leaders need to learn how to be Moses and not Saul.
I love that.
Transitional leadership lends itself to turnover. Transformational leadership lends itself to development and growth. And so for me, I think that's very important for the organization, is having those in-depth conversations, never thinking, oh, they're the custodian, they don't need to know. No, ask, hey, what are your thoughts about this? And they may say, whatever you decide, but give them that opportunity to do that. So I think that's very important that we lean towards transformational leadership, because what I've found is transitional leadership destroys organizations, because when you transition, everyone has their opinion. Well, I don't think Kevin should be the pastor. Well, I don't think JC should be the pastor. I like this person. But when it's transformational, it's not about a person, it's about a culture. Who brings the quality of our culture? Who brings a level of energy and synergy? Who brings a level of expertise? And so you stop looking for a person and you begin to look for the transformational personality in the person. And when you're looking for that transformational characteristic, it doesn't go, oh, to what I like or what I think. It goes to what's best for the organization.
And as I stated before, Dr. Campbell is made of energy. So I appreciate that. And Dr. Campbell, you hit just perfectly on the interlocking aspects of the whole still mindset, the still focus. To transform, you've got to serve. You've got to bring value to self and others. To sustain transformation, I really believe as we move into the I, it's inspirational, but that whole transformational piece, because I've been there. I've been there largely because I allowed busyness to get in the way, and I wasn't still my team. I didn't allow my team to gain their greatest value of me and the whole concept, whatever it was we were focused with, whatever the principles of the team was, because I allowed that non-value busyness to become my focus, and it pulled away that principle and value that could be attained through transformation. Said another way, as we move into the I, the influence was missing. And as leaders, we have that opportunity to influence, just like you and I, just a simple conversation. It doesn't always mean we learn or grow through influence in a classroom or through a textbook, even though those are great areas to do so. The simple things that we do in our daily lives provide us that opportunity to offer influence and to gain influence.
Absolutely.
And if we were to ask you, when you think back over your career, your life, where has your greatest, most positive, most effective influence come from?
In terms of a place or just how?
Just how, a person, a place? Was there a moment, or has it been more of a daily development for Dr. Campbell?
It is always a daily development. Dr. Campbell is never done learning. I am a lifelong learner. I'm always reading. I'm always examining. I'm always looking things up. I'm always doing research. But honestly, Kevin, for me, that influence comes from an absolute devotion to integrity. That means not that I'm perfect, but even when I make a mistake, my integrity will not allow myself to silence that mistake. I am the person that, even if it's uncomfortable to say, I made that decision. Kevin told me a month ago that that probably wouldn't be the best decision, and I didn't listen, and I got us in this mess. And now I want to get us out, and hopefully you all will be gracious enough to help me out of this mess. And moving forward, I'm going to pay close attention to my team. Integrity to me is so important to influence. Yes, are there individuals out there that have negative influence and don't have the best integrity? Yes, there are several that I could name. But for me, what has garnered my influence in my community, in my church, in my job, is my unwavering integrity. I speak my mind. I say what I need to say. Sometimes I grow silent, not because I am complacent, but because I'm always valuing my words. I'm always checking my attitude, um, how I approach others. When I'm in a disagreement with someone, I try to make peace. Uh, my integrity is so valuable and important to me because I believe, and I can't even remember who told me this, skill gets you in the room, character keeps you in the room. And so for me, I believe that I've done the work and gotten the education to be skilled, but ultimately, I want to hear people say, he's smart, but he's just a nice guy, or he's very intelligent and knows what he's doing, but gosh, he's so easy to work with. So for me, that's where my influence comes from. It's just trying to be a nice guy, not making anyone's life difficult, not making people feel less than because they don't have doctor in front of their name, not making people feel like, oh, they don't know what they're doing because I have more experience. No, making people feel like, hey, I don't care how long I've been at this organization. I value you. I'm going to ask you questions because I want to know what you think. So my integrity and my personality is very important to me. And I think that is what, in many ways, has gotten me influence.
Thank you for that, my friend. I can very much say that Dr. Campbell is a nice guy, and he is there to serve others, and he is there to bring influence, the positive influence. As you said, integrity is challenged every day by things around us, things we didn't expect to be
Absolutely.
around us. And it really takes, and you mentioned this earlier, Dr. Campbell, an intentionality of focus, if you will. And
Absolutely.
and I have found when I have stumbled, when I have failed, when I have not served my team to the level they deserved, and it's happened more so than I would care to admit, more times than I would care to admit, it's because I lost that intentionality or that consistency piece. How can we keep that focused? How have you been able to keep that intentional and consistent focus on integrity throughout your life and career?
Kevin, it's going to sound strange when I say it, but the way that I focused it is by realizing that any moment I could destroy it.
Mm.
I think sometimes we read our own press too much, Kevin, and we drink our own Kool-Aid a little too much to think that, oh, I would never. I love when I hear people say, oh, I would never do that. I would never. And I think to myself, I am a human being with flaws. I could one day blow up. I could one day have a bad day. Nothing went right this morning before I left the house. I forgot my wallet. I forgot my phone. And I come into work and I get a bad report. There is a possibility that I just lose it. But I have to remind myself, no, your integrity matters. So for me, what keeps me grounded and what I think will keep others grounded is one day you could lose it. And that to me helps me to remember, okay, what steps do you need to take, JC, to remember integrity is important? Your name is important. Your reputation is important. And not only that, but what's more important is how are you making the people around you feel? So I tend to very much so remember any of these pitfalls. I read articles and things about CEOs and Fortune 500 companies and millionaires and billionaires. They get caught up in things. And it's so easy for us to say, oh my God, this idiot, he or she should have done that or that. But now I read it from this lens. Now, JC, if that were you, would you fall in the same pit? Would you have taken that money? We have to, I think there's a healthy level of honesty that every leader needs. And the reason why I believe we need this is because when we are honest and transparent, we will put things in place, not just our own mind, but I will now say, prime example, if Kevin is the chief financial officer of my company and I'm the chief executive officer, and I say to myself, well, I know CEO A just got into some serious trouble. Hey, Kevin, did you read that article about the company over there? I want to make sure that never happens to us. So can we put some things in place where I'm never able to sign off on that check? I'm not the only person that can make that decision. That needs to go to the board. We put those things in place so that we use people's story, not against them, but against us to say, hey, let's check that at the door and ensure that we never fall off of the wagon, if you will, if I can use that term loosely. And I don't mean that insensitively, but always checking ourselves, because I think oftentimes power makes you more what you really are. And there are a lot of people that get in power and they were arrogant before they got the power. And whoo, when they get that power, it's like, whoa. So I think we ultimately have to remember, I'm human, they're human, we're in this together, we're a team, and I am no better than anyone else. The only difference is I have more responsibility and I have a bigger title. That's it. So I think just remembering, hey, it could be you too.
I appreciate that. What I heard you say was just keeping things in perspective, and keeping the focus on serving others and treating others as we should want to be treated ourselves in that regard. So thank you, Dr. Campbell. We have reached the end of this episode. I appreciate you so much, and hopefully would like to invite you to stick around for another episode so we can continue to talk about still leadership and leadership synergized. And thank you so much for what you're sharing. So much value for our viewers and our listeners. And we are going to have a second episode with Dr. J.C. Campbell, and it will be coming up in just a few weeks for your viewing pleasure. I'm Kevin Smith for Dr. J.C. Campbell. We hope that your leadership is synergized through still. Thank you for joining us.